So the man that tried to reconstruct this machine went around to all the people that owned them. Now, here's the funny thing about all this. The people were more than happy with this machine that Lockridge sold. And he would do it for very little money and something to drink. But the thing about this machine is that every one of these, he would only sell it to people that were campers. He wouldn't just go and sell it to somebody that wanted to run their house, because nobody in that town cared about running their house. So he would sell these to weekend campers who would just keep their camper warm with something that was less than 300 watts or just run lights. The problem with this machine was these brushes. We know that now, after all the reports. These brushes, when they wore out, being that there were Delco Ramey brushes for a 12-volt generator that would come off a Chevy car or a Cadillac, they would go down to the local auto parts store and say, I need a set of brushes for this, and they would put them in the machine, and they would be too thick, and the machine would never run again. So being that these people were not real well-to-do, the scrap man would come around, and they would sell the copper, because this thing was tons of copper here. Copper wire here, copper wire here. Big 35 feet sheet, and they would just sell it for scrap price to get a few bucks.
Because it was junk.
Because it was junk after that. It didn't work anymore, so it wore out. So now one of these machines is surviving except for what you see right here. And it's built wrong. Because this Lockridge never relayed to anybody how all these circuits hooked up. And so this poor gentleman that tried to reconstruct it, and this is, I think it says right here that he started work on this in '80. At least the notes. Now here's the other funny thing. Then when he started work on this, most of the people were so old, because these were just old campers that Lockridge would sell it to. And they were so old, and they remember all about the machine because they talk about it. So, well, I just gave it a start with a pull cord, and away she went. And as long as I kept the lights at less than 300 watts, I had lights all night long, all day long, all night long, all day long. And it would even charge a battery. It would charge up your truck battery, as long as you didn't exceed the 300 watts. So anyway, this is an original drawing from a person that he found that actually worked with Lockridge. And he drew the way it was, but as you notice, he doesn't know what these boxes are or where they're going. So what we have here is a machine that was a real over Unity machine that came out of Germany, and to this day it's a secret except for what you see right here. What we have is a machine that came out of Germany, and since he hired very slow people, and today you would say that person would be a little bit retarded. That would be the perfect person to do this, because they wouldn't know. They would only know, well, I wound this, and it was 400 feet long, and we twisted them together, and then we wound them around this tube here that we made, and that's all I did. That's all I did.
Repeating that right down to the
Yeah, they keep repeating that because they don't know what's going to happen with this piece, and how he slotted the case, from what I understand, was they drilled holes and they filed it. This happened to be milled, milled out. And there was no, at that time there was no electronics like this at all. And this is what we have, and this is what we could find out from the people in the town. And the guy that did this, that did all this work and everything, was actually thrown off farms, thinking that there might have been a machine, say in an attic someplace like that somebody just put away and never did sell for copper. But unfortunately, to reconstruct something like this, it would take a long time. And I said I would get around to it one of these days, but I don't know which day. And because I do have it pretty well formulated in my mind about how you would switch something like this with the brushes and everything. But trying to get the manuals on a Delco Ramey generator, there are some older books, which I did find, that actually show how this armature is actually wound, because they did change them. They changed them into it so that they wouldn't spark here on the commutators. And that probably was why the brushes wore out, because they needed to generate this radiant spike to fill this capacitor to switch this motor. And the people involved in this that actually owned them said they would give it a pull, and they wouldn't turn the lights on until it got up to about 5,000 RPMs. And that's where it ran. It ran at about 5,000 RPMs, the same as a permanent magnet motor. When you hear people talk about permanent magnet motors, they run at about 5,000 RPMs. And they all seem to do the same thing when they're using this energy. They're all around that speed. And if you think about this, 5,000 RPMs at this weight, right, is quite a flywheel.
How heavy is that?
This is about,
3 pounds, 4 pounds?
this is about maybe 8 pounds, 9 pounds.
Okay.
And the Delco generators were really heavy duty built. You can see just by the windings there.
What vintage of Delco generator would that have been?
Oh, this is 50s. This had to be 50s. Just when the 12 volts first started coming out, maybe 60s.
And this was how many volts?
12 volts.
12 volts, okay.
Yeah, he moved it from 6 volts to 12 volts. Because remember, the Volkswagen generator was a Bosch generator. So that what they brought back was a Bosch generator that was set up basically like this. And from all the people that just did one job, they constructed this. This guy drew this, and another guy
So he
drew that, and
the guy that recreated the process, interviewed all these.
Yes, he did.
Interviewed all these slow people, who.
Yes, he did.
Who then drew the drawings.
Right, and now just recently, the last of them, the people that worked with this, they're gone. They just died off. And then as I look through all this, you can tell that if you don't keep a model of your work and a sample of something somewhere that's put away, well, you'll never be able to reconstruct exactly the way that it was done. So
So how did you get hold of this job?
I had a friend who was tired of trying to work on it. And basically he ran out of people to go talk to. But, you know, he says, well, John, he says, you've done a lot of things with switching. You might be able to figure it out. And no hurry. You know, but I can tell you these days it's probably worth looking into it, except that the generators are getting harder and harder to find. And it was mechanical, so
But they could retool that kind of
they,
stuff.
they could retool this, and I'm sure somebody's already done it somewhere.
Right.
And I'm sure that in Germany they had plenty of these machines. But where they went to, nobody knows. We didn't know the exact person in
But-
Germany that he got it.
But this was found in some German's house,
Yes,
running.
yes.
So it's, the guy
When
could
they
have,
captured the device.
yeah. So I mean, the guy could have been working on a project somewhere. This was maybe a throwaway from the real project.
Well, it could have been. I mean, you
'Cause
know,
it presumably would be scalable.
well, Adolf Hitler had, you know, he was working on every device known. You know, and they didn't, at that time, they didn't really have a lot of fuel. And I'm sure that they were under national security to keep the lights to a minimum, don't draw any power, right?
Yeah, same as Britain was.
Right, and this would be something that would give you 300 watts worth of lights. Well, let me tell you something. If you're out in the pitch black, 300 watts worth of light's pretty bright,
Yeah.
especially if you're looking yonder down some field somewhere. But the point was it would run 3 or 4 of these seal beam car headlights, right, with no problem at all. Up to 300 watts. And I think they're 65 watts apiece. So basically there you have it. That's what we know about Lockridge.
And right here is the end of the trail.
Right, exactly.
And the guy that gave you the motor gave you the book as well?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Okay?
he gave me the whole box, handed it to me in a box just like this. In fact, this is the way he handed it to me. Is this was just like you see it here.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to put it back in the same box. But this is the way he just handed it to me. Just like that.
Okay.
And said, have at it.
And so you figure that the missing piece in the puzzle was that when they were trying to recreate it, nobody understood.
Well,
The
what it
radius-
was
the
is
radius-
he hired everybody in town that was very slow in learning.
All the mentally challenged.
Yes, all the mentally challenged, because he knew if he gave them a job, they'd work for basically nothing,
Right.
right? And that they would only do that one job, and they never would go to the local bar or anything and have a discussion about what they were working on.
Right.
So,
And they'd actually be quite satisfied doing
oh
it.
yeah, they were satisfied doing what they were doing, because the people were quite satisfied that bought the machines.
Yeah, but just to clarify, the recreated machines that were created in this country and sold to the campers were not over Unity.
These were over Unity
They were over
machines.
Unity, but they would burn out, or they
Yeah,
because when
Right,
the
because
brushes
see-
were the wrong size.
right. Well, see, this is the mistake everybody makes. It's one thing to be over Unity, and it's one thing to be perpetual. So when people say to you, oh, you've invented a perpetual motion machine. No, you have not. There's nothing perpetual.
Right.
Something breaks here or there. You know, one day the sun burns out and the earth stops turning, so it's not perpetual either.
Right.
But they're calling it that. There's a confusion between what's over Unity. When we talk about an over Unity machine, it can run itself until the parts wear out and break, which this did.
But the problem was they would then replace the brushes.
Right, that was the problem.
With American brushes, Delco brushes.
No, these were all American brushes.
Okay.
But they were filed. If you look at them with the most that I could run down is if you look at the brush, they had to file the brush to fit the segment of the commutator. So these are normal standard brushes,
Right.
but they're sanded down. Well, the people that own the machine figured, oh, it's just a pair of brushes and it's Delco Ramy, and they put it in the machine and it wouldn't run.
Right.
If they would have sanded the brushes down, guess what? The machine would have ran again.
Right.
So, if they'd sanded the brushes down, the machine would have run again.
Yes, if
but
they
were,
would have.
But
right.
they were buying new brushes.
They were buying new brushes, and Lockridge never told one of them, you know, that the brushes that he see it,
So the clearances were too small?
the clearances were too big. See, because, and that's a good question, because see here, if you look, let me get my glasses here. If you look very carefully, this brush just fits.
It fits between the in the
Yes,
slot.
yes.
Right.
But the
But the new-
other brush would have been partway across this, shorting these poles out.
But the new brush would have been the same width, surely.
No, the new brush was much thicker. These are sanded.
They were sanded to a thinness.
Yes, this thinness.
Okay, so the width of the brush
Was-
was
right.
Lockridge sanded that down.
Right, like a-
to fit.
Hold just a
The
second,
slot.
and I'll go get a generator,
Okay.
and I'll show you the difference in the brush. Here, Tony. You can see right away what they did. Look at the size of the brush. See?
Yeah. So hold on a second. Do that again.
See, it's over the commutator segments.
Right. No, I see that. Let me see the Lockridge one again. So he sanded it down. It's thinner
Yeah, to fit this.
to exactly fit the slot
Yes.
here. Okay. So when they put the new brushes in, it wouldn't work.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
they sold the machine for copper.
Yeah. That was his secret.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the secret that he kept.
I wonder why he wouldn't have them come back and buy new brushes from him.
Well, he was drunk.
Good point.
He was drunk all the time, right? And they figured, and he wasn't making them anymore.
Yeah.
He was busy chasing his wife,
Yeah.
who was a floozy in town,
Wow.
who he was going to get even with. So, anybody that works on a free energy device, you know, there's always a sad ending to this.
I was going to say, what's the moral of the story?
Well, the moral of the story is that he should have stayed in business, kept selling replacement brushes, and everything would have been just
It
fine.
was just fine. And forget about chasing his wife, right?
Yeah.
Who he wasn't going to, cure at all.
Right.
So,
So is this particular machine an O-Unity machine?
yes.
As is.
Yes, if it runs.
If it
you
runs.
can get it to run.
Yeah.
If you could figure out the exact circuit to what these people have drawn,
Right.
it would do exactly what Lockridge's did. It's the only thing missing here is this big long capacitor.
Right.
But we know about that because it's in the notes. The guy that made it has written it up.
35 feet is a long, long length.
Well, yeah, because you need so many microfarad. You got to remember what Lockridge did. He just copied the German machine. Him and his partner took it all apart and documented it and copied it. And then they both went their separate ways.
Because this must be what, about 15 feet?
Yes,
Well, yeah.
yes.
But you're saying that you could engineer around the
Well,
necessity.
today we could make this easy.
Yeah.
You know, we could make this have this capacitor made easy because we have copper that's in big sheets, and we could stretch that out, and we can go get waxed butcher paper and the whole bit. And
Yeah.
we would want to construct it, but the problem is that everybody that Lockridge hired, this is going to be one heck of a puzzle because each one of these is barely drawn in electrical terms.
Right.
It's just a block, A, B, and C. Okay, fine. You know, but what's in that block where A, B, and C goes? And if you look very closely, he's got this marked.
That's it. Today I have to go and wind coil B.
Yes, exactly.
And Millie here will be winding coil A.
That's right.
And we'll do it every day.
And Brother Bob will be soldering just this one sheet. And Rick tonight will be winding it around the casing. And then they'll hand me the whole thing, and they won't ever see it again. So there you have it, the story of the Lockridge device.
Are you planning on releasing those notes, John?
No.
Yeah.
No, I'm not, because I won't release anything unless it's a workable thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is essentially a work in progress report
Right, exactly.
and something for the historical record.
And something to let everybody know that another machine existed out there. And very sad part about this was that Lockridge was the town drunk, and he was happily married, and he did have a house, but his wife was cheating on him the whole time, and it was upsetting him. So in the end, what Lockridge did, because it didn't make any difference whether he was making these machines or not. You know, he doused the house with gasoline and lit a match.
Wow.
And then he turned to himself, and they said, and he poured the can of gasoline over the top of his head and lit himself on fire, and that was it.
Oh my God.